We reconvene at Liberty Conspiracy Live here on Rokfin, on Rumble, on Twitter/X, and yes, still on YouTube. I can't believe it. Shh, don't tell anybody. YouTube, you didn't see anything. And neither did you, Meta, because we're not going on Facebook. Hi, everybody. I'm Gardner Goldsmith. Good to have you here in the field where we plot and plan and crouch and conspire for the greater days of freedom that hopefully lie ahead. We take the news Monday through Friday at 6 p.m., break it apart, and try to derive long-standing lessons for liberty from those news stories, whether they be about philosophy, economics, religion, history, and we interact. You can do so on X. I can see your comments, thanks to the good people at StreamYard. And we do so at Rokfin, our original home, as well as on Rumble. And I checked in maybe a couple times on YouTube. We don't have a lot of people watching on YouTube, but if you are over there, thank you. And wherever you're watching the show live, thanks for being here. Thanks for finding the show and believing in the principles of individual liberty, in sovereignty of oneself, in free will, and treating your neighbor accordingly, which is kind of nice, peaceful interaction. So thanks for being here. I hope you're having a peaceful, easy feeling, as the song might go. And I hope you had a beautiful day. It's the 9th of July, 2024. And wow, what an amazing summer it's been around New England. And I hope wherever you are, summer or winter, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, I hope you're having a great, great time. And I hope you had a wonderful day. We're going to have a great time tonight as we take apart those news stories and derive that intellectual ammunition. And of course, if you have suggestions, feed them into the chat. And if you're watching after the fact, please remember that almost every story that I discuss in the program, I try to set it up such that it's a good news resource for you. And you can go into my X feed and find the stories from that day, and then you can link to those things yourself. So it's a way to sort of show people what I've shown them. If they want to explore these things themselves, if maybe they have disagreements over some of the opinions, they might want to offer me some different thoughts, they can go on and check the stories as well. And I should make sure that I mention, please remember to head to my Substack. Every Sunday, you'll find the Sunday News Assembly at my Substack, where there are typically at least 20 stories pertaining to freedom and video links now, plus contextual information, again, to help provide some of the historical, philosophical, economic axioms that might be contained within those stories. And then we can carry them with us and send them out to friends and that sort of stuff. And don't forget, if you're watching after the fact, please, if you're interested in any of the video clips that we show here, any of the subjects that are the chunks within the show, you can pause it on Rumble and YouTube, and you can link it to friends or family, that sort of thing, at that time code. So hopefully that works for you, and hopefully this is proven to be a good place to utilize those resources for you every Monday through Friday. So thanks, and please spread the word about the show. We've got great people who support the show and wonderful responses lately. I was getting my car repaired earlier today, met a guy who said, "Oh, I will watch your show." And I was like, "Thank you very much. That's really cool." So very good stuff. We're growing. We're not huge, but we're growing. And I really appreciate everybody who's been here helping to plant the seeds and spread the word of liberty. Let's look at what's on tap tonight, everybody. July 9th, 2024. Tonight. Genesis, what are we discussing? Well, we're looking at, of course, the news flash. The news flash. It is the White House Medical Privacy Edition. Well, isn't that just special? Oh, I see. Let's celebrate the medical privacy of the president, shall we? Sure. You're only paying his salary. We'll get into that one. It's gonna be fun till the daddy put the secrecy away. Is that the way the Beach Boys song went? I don't know. Then our first major story. We're gonna actually fold out the news flash into the first major story. The speaker speaks 25th Amendment while Kareem, I love that, Kareem. Who thought of that? Somebody in the chat thought of that last week. It was funny. When I was broadcasting from Mother Russia, and then I left Mother Russia so I could broadcast here and spread the Russian propaganda within the United States of Amerikansky Russia. Yes, from Russia to Russia we travel. So from Russia with love. Yes. So KJB, P, says that she is going to be silent about medical information. And don't you just feel a little bit frustrated about that? If maybe you understand that we don't have any medical privacy? Yeah, that's interesting. It's so much fun. It's fun to be a subject of the clan up there, huh? It's great. Then we're going to be looking at New York City. New York City! The migrant double talk of the mayor. Mayor for mayor, as they would say in Townsville in the Powerpuff Girls. Yes, his immigrant welfare cards. Yes, he is the joker in the pack, the immigrant welfare cards. How about no welfare for anyone? Well, there's a new fold. There's a new etch in the deck in one of those cards. It's a marked card, and we'll tell you all about it. We'll go into war information. Some very, very big news coming out of Ukraine that is, of course, getting mishandled by the Western media. We've got some interesting footage I was able to record for you today. I think you'll dig it. As, what was it, the frog who used to eat cereal? Dig'em? That was the name of the frog, wasn't it? I can't remember. I never ate that stuff. We ate human flesh as children. We grew up on that, sired by wolves in the woods. Then, of course, yes, we'll talk about the Ukraine weapons migrating. As I promised last night, I've got some great footage from RT, and they put together a terrific documentary. I've got two segments that I'd like to show you, and probably give you one of those segments tonight about of course, the United States weapons going to Ukraine and then finding their way into Syria and then finding their way into the Middle East. So that's just great. It just warms the heart, doesn't it? What a great Christian virtue to be spreading weapons all around the world. That's awesome. So let's check in and say hi to everybody inside X-Land. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And inside Rokfin Land, the king of the Carloses is there. Hey, Carlos. Carlos says, sorry, late entry. Good to see you all. Carlos, man, you are great. I really appreciate you just being here. This is great. You're late entry. That was a few minutes ago anyway. And Harry Hart is here. You're right on target, guys. Great to see you, everybody. Really good to see you. I want to go inside Rumble. Just real quick, say hi to the lieutenant. I salute the Oracle of Truth. Freegan is coming down from Toronto with the dancing banana and the king of the opossums. Thank you. The bot has arrived. The bot has arrived. All right, you guys. Well, we will spread the Russian bot disinformation now as we travel to Gardner Street in Allston, Massachusetts, where my friends and I shot an independent film one day at my friend Carter Blanchard's house. He was renting a house on Gardner Street, seriously. And it was around the corner from Blanchard's Liquors, if you're familiar with that, at the intersection of Harvard Ave and some other street. I don't even know what it is. So now let's go to this key scene from the epic film Skippy Binderman as we welcome the guys from, you got it, my friends, the Newsflash.
Yes? Oh, hello. Hello. We're Mary's parents. Oh, well, come on in, fellas. Hold it a second. Mary's parents burned to death last year. Wait a minute. I know you guys. You're from the Newsflash.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you all for being here on what is, I believe, the smallest crowd ever assembled for a Republican press conference. I don't know where everybody is this morning. Oh, they're chasing down the Democrats for a change.
Someone came here.
No, we cannot share names of specialists broadly, from a dermatologist to a neurologist.
I've said it for years now. He's cogent. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent.
And he's got an ego and he doesn't want to quit. He doesn't want to do that. It just looks to me like that's what he wants. I think Jill would like to see him stay. She's having a good time.
This version of Biden intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
You know, it's like looking at a circus. I feel like the ringleader, you know? Holy smoke. They just keep introducing new clowns into the circus. It's unbelievable. All right, my friends, let's go to the first news story. You saw an indication of this as the mighty double talker, the backstabber, and that's, by the way, a great song by the Backyard Babies. Oh, no. It was the Backyard Babies, Backstabber. They're from Stockholm, Sweden. Backstabber. Awesome stuff. Get the Gearhead live disc. All sorts of great Swedish punk bands on it. Here it is, everybody. Speaker Johnson. He speaketh the 25th Amendment. He says it is appropriate to remove Biden. I just have one question. Do you trust anything this guy says? I don't. Okay, but anyway, here's what he says. So there he is in his nice dapper suit with all the other stuffed shirts behind him, stuffed blouses. And here it is. While Democrats are soul searching, this comes to us from the Washington Times. While Democrats are soul searching on whether to support President Biden as the Democrat nominee, not Democratic, it's the Democrat Party, not Democratic Party. House Speaker Mike Mickey Slip-em-a-Mickey Johnson and fellow Republican leaders view the president's tenure as a danger to the country. Oh, I'm so glad you guys are bringing this up now, like you didn't know. Polls and some Democrats in Washington have turned against Mr. Biden, something that Mr. Johnson said Republicans should enjoy politically. Did he really say that? I wonder. They don't have a direct quote on that. He's not enjoying the reality of it, arguing that Mr. Biden's condition is dangerous. Just like Jesus Christ Superstar. He is dangerous. Asked again if he supported Representative Chip Roy's resolution to call on Vice President Kamala Harris to remove Mr. Biden from office with the 25th Amendment, Mr. Johnson said most Americans and Republicans would agree if it was appropriate for her to take that historic step. Okay, so make of it what you will. The fact that he's been pumped along this long, everybody knew this was a problem in 2019, at least with his ability to debate. I saw that. I wasn't willing to say that he had outright Alzheimer's, but I didn't think he was going to be too live in a debate. And of course, they hid him in the basement, just like, like hiding dead bodies or something from a mass murderer who maybe, sent weapons to Ukraine and Israel to slaughter people, that sort of thing. I can't imagine any of those people in Washington at all being like those people. Can you? No. But I do want, again, to call to task the pop media figures who evidently have been quite aware of this and have been covering it up. And we knew they've been covering it up. We know they don't want to talk about it. So let's turn to a guy who has been quite frustrated about this. He is, of course, the man behind System Update. He's Glenn Greenwald. Let's share some time with Glenn as he lets off a little steam.
Here is Matt Yglesias, who is deservedly known as one of the most partisan Democratic loyalists in all of media. And he has spent months, if not years, mocking viciously the idea that Joe Biden is not cognitively capable to be the president, that he should step down and they should choose another candidate. And now all of a sudden he looks around him and he sees how isolated he is, that every single one of the other liberal pundits like him in his space and his sphere are saying the exact opposite of what he's saying. Namely, they're now all saying, we want Biden gone from the race. They all joined hands and switched views. And so obviously people like Matt Yglesias have no ability to stand alone from the herd. They're herd animals. I think this is more than anything the thing that has corrupted journalism. These people are petrified to even take one tiny little step out of line from what the prevailing media narrative is. And as a result, here's Matt Yglesias today with his tweet promoting an article he wrote, quote, "In case you missed it, why I sincerely expected Biden to prove the doubters wrong at the debate, why I was wrong, and why it's so much more than, quote, one bad night," or whatever they're saying. Matt Yglesias has never deviated from the White House party line. He, at best, makes very polite suggestions for how they could strengthen their message, things like that. But it is remarkable to watch all these people read from the same script for months and even years. And then on the same day, with the same signaling, they all just switch. And now they're required, they're obligated. 3 weeks ago, they were required to say that Joe Biden was cognitively vigorous and capable. And then the debate happened, and now they're all required to read from the opposite script, and they all will be.
Yes, they're still reading from the same script. We all know. We knew that they were going to try to dump Biden. Everybody knew that. It's just a question of whom they're going to try to choose to get into that spot to run, and whether or not Biden will willingly leave because he's such an egomaniac mass murderer. He's such a corrupt devil. That's the deal. I mean, what? I feel like Seinfeld. Who are these people who are coming out of the woodwork? Kramer, what's going on? I mean, very clearly, we've shown the clips for a number of days now in the news flash of Joe Scarborough talking about how he's the best Biden ever. When I got on America Unplugged, I mentioned I'm the best Biden ever. I identify as the best Biden ever, right? So we know they've been spouting the narrative. They've been doing the script all along. And it just got to a point where obviously they knew that Trump would likely, even with vote manipulation, beat Biden by such a huge margin beforehand, before an election, that they wouldn't really be able to cover it up and pad the numbers for some electoral victory or anything like that in actual ballot boxes, right? Or not ballot boxes, in the vote startomatic, electromatic boxes, right? In the pre-programmed, easy to hack computers. Go ahead, keep voting. I'm sure it'll get better. So life will just get much better if you just keep devoting a lot of money to getting certain people elected and then, of course, failing all the time. It works. It's just great. Or getting, Speaker Johnson in there because he's so honest and trustworthy as well. Hi, Israel. How are you doing? Hey, Ukraine, here's some more. So anyway, Glenn's spot on this. And we saw Scarborough. We've seen so many of these people do this, and now they're switching around. And yes, they are free to do so now because they're told that they no longer have to cover up, I'm sure. And what are some of the indications about that? Well, don't forget, yesterday we got to cover this story, and one of the reporters who blew the whistle about the White House providing interview questions to the Biden campaign, and then the campaign handing those over to the questioners at 2 radio stations. One of them, the woman from WURD, was fired after she blew the whistle. So maybe, especially for the lower level people who aren't as secure in their jobs and aren't making millions of dollars, maybe for them, some of them might be ideologically inclined to agree and to hide this because they don't want Donald Trump getting in. So anything they can do to keep the Democrat in office, they know that he'll be propped up like a puppet. He'll have a stick up the puppet. They'll just do a Punch and Judy show and somebody else will be running the show. But at least it's not the person they don't want in office, right? So ideologically, many of these people are inclined anyway. Joe Scarborough, we know he is. Mike Barnicle is. The people at the View are. They don't care. They just want their ideological team in there. Of course, the teams aren't all that much different, especially when it comes to warfare and actually recognizing the Constitution. Even Republicans don't recognize many of the facets of the Constitution, and they call themselves constitutionalists. It's pretty ridiculous. And yes, I've gotten laser stares at public forums where I've called people out on this. Like, so, you claim to support the Constitution. What is the Constitution? Oh, don't you understand? I'm a traditionalist. How can you dare question me on constitutional tradition? Oh, okay. Sorry I said that, Mr. GOPer. So maybe they're ideologically inclined, but also there's pressure. And we can see the White House using tax money to create the questions and then sending those over, which I think is a violation of their wonderful pie in the sky campaign finance statutes, sending them over to the Biden campaign, which then sends them over to the reporters because they want to make sure the reporters will toe the line. That's awesome, isn't it? It's great. Well, we got a little bit more here, and I want to hand this over to you. The good people at Redacted covered this beautifully, and part of it has to do with the press conference today. Steve Doocy was there. A lot of people were there, and as you saw, the Speaker of the House was surprised that all of a sudden a lot of the left-wing reporters weren't there to try to go after him and attack him and try to get him to say something dumb or tried to paint something in a different way or expose him for some sort of hypocrisy. No, instead, they were focused on the Biden situation and what's going to happen. And the speaker actually noticed, where are all the reporters? What's going on? I thought I was interesting. I'm sending weapons to Israel. Isn't that good enough? What's going on? Come on, everybody. Come on, guys. I thought we were friends. And then he says, oh, I realize that's right. You got something to cover now. The very clear and obvious fact that Biden's got to go. So we've got the 25th Amendment possibly to be brought up. Speaker Johnson saying, yes, 25th Amendment, 25 of them in the year 2525. And it's the same sort of thing that Democrats kept mentioning about Mr. Trump. I'm going to be the best 25th Amendment guy plucked out of office if I'm actually not operating from jail. It's going to be great. Going to have the best White House in the Sing Sing. It's going to be fantastic. Be awesome. I might even operate from Syria, where we still sit on a third of the land, got all the oil. It's going to be great. But maybe, just maybe, the Democrats now are recognizing that their standard for applying the 25th Amendment to a clearly not cognitively impaired Donald Trump. He's not cognitively impaired. He's just ethically impaired, right? Clearly. And of course, he's woefully uninformed on the Constitution. If he is informed on the Constitution, then he's even more evil than I thought. But I think he arrives at evil consequences due to his egomaniacal nature and his sort of lack of interest in actually investigating anything that has to do with principles or the Constitution or anything like that. But Biden's he's had a dark heart all along. He's just been a slickster, really wicked all along. And I think it goes back to the time he was a teenager. The minute the guy was in law school, he was cheating, right? So he's been a real nasty piece of work for a long time. Donald Trump, corrupt, yeah, but maybe a little less wickedness to the corruption, if you can say that. I don't know. I don't know. I think Joe Biden is much more Viper-esque. But needless to say, they're both destructive. And the 25th Amendment clearly was not applicable to Donald Trump. There were a lot of other reasons to impeach him and remove him for breach of the Constitution. But of course, Congress doesn't care about that. So let's turn to the final two facets of this to just, do a quick refresher. We got the 25th Amendment stuff being chatted about. People are talking about Kamala Harris. Looks like that might be the way they go. I don't care about the horse race stuff too much because I don't really think it's going to change very much when it comes to my individual sovereignty and my learning capacity to learn more about freedom. I look at these stories up to a certain point. I try to absorb information about the horse race stuff, that sort of thing, and then the factors within their statutes that might apply, some of the quick information about revelations on things. And then I say, okay, I'm really not going to get much more learning out of this. But there are some interesting facets to it, so I want to share those with you. I want to give you some great stuff from the folks in fact, I brought my Redacted hat in from the car. They're back, baby, in their new studio. Here we go. Redacted, covering the story. Rocking. Oh, by the way, this is the 75th anniversary of that august body, NATO. So Joe Biden obviously is going to be very tired because he's traveling from city to city. We're talking to the Asian Pacific people, talking to the NATO people about, of course, how to rule the world.
Instead goes after Republicans. We know that that's the case, right? Even Speaker Mike Johnson today noticed this. Watch.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you all for being here on what is, I believe, the smallest crowd ever assembled for a Republican press conference. I don't know where everybody is this morning. Oh, they're chasing down the Democrats for a change. This is a really interesting phenomenon. And the reason it's so noteworthy and the reason that most of the Hill press are following the Democrats around now, we had almost no one outside our conference meeting this morning. Normally, you're all there gathered in the hallways. They're busy because they're chasing down our Democrat colleagues and asking them about Joe Biden's mental acuity and their efforts to cover it up. And that's what it's been. I mean, we could give you example after example after example. It's all on tape. It's all on record. Everybody knows it. Democrats, our colleagues, for 3.5 years have been covering up this glaring problem. The staff in the White House have been covering it up, and so have the Democrats in Congress. Just last month, I brought a couple of examples. Representative Dan Goldman said Biden was sharper than anyone he'd spoken to and that he has, quote, a photographic memory, unquote. Representative Eric Swalwell said that Biden put many of us to shame with his energy. I mean, there are example after example after example, leading Democrats and noteworthy Democrats on the Hill who have not been in the dark about this. They've been saying things I think most of them understand is simply not true, and they've misled the American people. And this is dangerous.
So let me just pause that and ask you a question. Why do you think that he allowed himself to be a party to misleading these people, the American people? If he says they've been aware of this and he's been aware that his opponents have been aware of it, why didn't he speak up? Why didn't he say, here's what they're telling you, here's what we know, here are video clips, here's what they're saying, here's what Joe Biden is like? Why didn't he speak up? Why is he a party to the deception? And now he's coming out saying, well, we knew all along. Why didn't you say something there, buddy? Your silence is complicity. Is it not? By the way, thank you, I Can't Believe, for being inside X, the big story. Yes, I might just play that just for the heck of it because you complimented my redacted hat. Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. Now back to the man who might want to watch Redacted. He could learn a few things.
Dangerous. So dangerous that the leader of the free world, the guy who's in charge of the nuclear codes, you can't speak, can't think, can't be up past 8 p.m.
Yes.
You know, as Peter Ducey asked KJ earlier today, he's like, well, who, you know, if something happens after 8 p.m., like who handles the nuclear codes if President Biden's in bed?
Right. Her response was, well, he has a staff and they'll come get him.
They'll wake him up.
Right. But even if they wake him up, you still get the post PM Biden.
Right.
Like the problem persists.
So yesterday, the usually fawning left-wing press finally started asking questions about Biden's potential Parkinson's disease and neurodegenerative disease. Why has a world-renowned Parkinson's specialist been to the White House 8 times recently? And she couldn't answer that question, and she refused to answer that question for his privacy.
We have to. Others he would have met with. We cannot, you can share names in regards to if someone came here. No, we cannot share.
We cannot share names of specialists broadly, from a dermatologist to a neurologist. We cannot share names. There are security reasons. We have to. We have to protect. I understand that. I hear you.
Right there for anyone to see.
Ed, I hear you. I cannot from here confirm any of that because we have to keep their privacy. I think they would appreciate that too. We have to give them.
The doctor.
We have to keep their privacy.
It is public information.
I hear you. Guys, hold on a second. There's no reason to go back and forth and be in this aggressive way.
Missed around here about how information's been shared with the press corps.
What do you missed about? What do you miss about?
Everything he just asked about.
And then every time I come back and I answer the question that you guys asked.
Correctly, you have to come back and clean up.
I never answered the question incorrectly. That is not true. I was asked about a medical exam.
Oh yeah. So I can't tell you about the Park.
All right. So I can't tell you about the Parkinson's he's talking about. And the thing that gets me is just this bickering back and forth. She's clearly trying to deceive. We can't tell you the names. We don't need to know the names. All we need to know is what were they investigating? He is getting paid with our money. That's been his career. He's supposedly a public servant, while, of course, they point their government guns at us. I think we know who the servants are. And let's just ask Kareem Jean-Pierre about this privacy issue. Does anybody remember the so-called HIPAA Act? That's the one that they sold to us in the 1990s, thanks to the so-called conservative from Ohio. What was that guy's name? The Republican. Can't even remember. It was something that Senator Orrin Hatch helped cook that up, along with Ted Kennedy. The HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Affordability Act, privacy, affordability, portability, but privacy was part of it. And HIPAA included in it a provision that mandated medical centers that were taking federal government money that they would have to get your signature before they could share data with other medical providers. That's not something that the federal government's supposed to be talking about. They're not supposed to be telling anybody what the stipulations of their contracts might be. That's called fascism. So instead of letting you decide whether you wanted to go to a doctor that shared information with, say, ambulance services or other specialists very quickly, because, of course, computers were coming online. They were trying to look forward into the future, right? So Orrin Hatch and Ted Kennedy and others, they got together and they had their staffs, their great future-thinking staffs, put together this invasion of your private contract. If you didn't like a doctor sharing your information with, say, insurance companies automatically or other doctors' offices, if they requested it without your permission, you don't have to go there. But instead, they mandated that they would have to get your signature. That's why when you go to the doctors, you always have to sign the HIPAA form, right? Also, the unseen part of HIPAA for many, but I actually read the bill when it came out in 1996, I think it was. If, as I've mentioned on the show, if you go between pages 75 and 95, 96 on the PDF of HIPAA, you'll see in it, while they claim that it's about privacy and portability and affordability, the privacy part is not really in there at all. Not only is your contractual arrangement with the doctor of your choice not part of the privacy arrangement, because they're going to force you to sign a document and force the doctor to make you sign it if they are going to share your information. But in addition to that, between pages 75 and 96 on the 100% size of the PDF, you will find that they claim for the U.S. government the power, without any protection from the Fourth Amendment, without any regard to it, to collect your medical data. The Secretary of the Health and Human Services Agency can collect your medical data at any time. They apply a number to you. Everyone has a special, they wrote it in their medical identification code. This has been there since 1996. Some of us knew about it. Some of us wrote about it. Some of us never heard anybody talk about it. Now, anytime that the Secretary of Health and Human Services wants medical data, they can turn to any office that is accepting Medicare patients or any other sort of government subsidy, and they can tell that person, you must hand over all of the records of everyone we want. And they didn't start doing it. They didn't implement that facet of HIPAA until Obamacare was finalized after it went into the Supreme Court. There you go. So with Obamacare came the trigger, the catalyst for the use of the 1996 invasion of privacy, medical data, medical privacy invasion of the very bill that they claimed was for your protection and privacy, right? So every time you sign that little thing, you can remember, oh yeah, that's right. I'm signing this, and that represents a breach of my contract with the doctor, and hidden behind the curtain is the hand of law coming down, as Radio Birdman would say, because they can gather the information in their hands anytime they want. Isn't that great? So they prevent you contractually from making your own arrangements about privacy. And at the same time, they claim they're pushing privacy while they're also claiming the ability to collect your medical data without a warrant. That's what HIPAA did. And that's what Obamacare started. They started to utilize it. That's how you get to vaccine tracing, contact tracing, I should say, vaccine medical records, how many people have been jabbed, how many not. It's all available to the HHS. They can get in anytime they want to. And she's got the gall, KJP, to be talking about medical privacy in the White House. Joe Biden has medical privacy. How about you? That's where we are. So I figured I'd just give that reminder to KJP. And KJP, I hope you don't mind the little history lesson going back to 1996, pal. I hope you like it. That's awesome. While you talk about medical privacy, you're just a real class act. That's great. While the rest of us here, we underlings, we feudal serfs, can have our privacy invaded contrary to the Constitution at any time. That's great. Now let's just check out the horse race aspect of this from a guy who's a big booster of Donald Trump. This is not Howie Carr talking to Donald Trump, but playing a radio interview with Donald Trump, talking about the Biden situation to cap this off. Here we go.
Morning's interview, last night's interview, you didn't hear any papers rustling.
Come on, man.
It's almost like Donald Trump doesn't need notes to conduct a conversation over the telephone. Go figure. Cut 5.
You know, it looks to me like he may very well stay in. He's got an ego and he doesn't want to quit. He doesn't want to do that. It just looks to me like that's what he wants. I think Jill would like to see him stay. She's having a good time. I notice she really seems to be having a good time. And I'm hearing that Hunter is calling the shots. So this isn't necessarily a very positive thing for our country. But I think he, might very well stay in. And if he does, nobody wants to give that up that way. He's going to feel badly about himself for a long time. It's hard to give it up that way, the way where they're trying to force him out. So, I mean, you really have to speak to his doctors, but obviously he's been sheltered by the fake news media. That's why they call it the fake news.
You got to hand it to Trump. Sometimes he has those end of the sentence zingers and so on. But I think in that case, I don't disagree with Trump there at all. I still find him to be unscrupulous, and I don't agree with him on many, many things. And I think he should have been impeached, and he could be charged with war crimes. And he's been way wrong on everything from the jabs to the immigration stuff, because the feds aren't supposed to have anything to do with that. But in that case, I think he did spell it out pretty well. So let's head on over into Rokfin and Rumble chat, everybody. And and by the way, if anybody's friends with KJP, Kareem, Jean-Pierre, tell her I say hi and tell her to stop messing with my medical records, and that maybe the pot can call the kettle black as pitch when it comes to the fact that these people are massive hypocrites. Just unbelievable. Just amazing. They're sitting there talking about medical privacy, and they invade our privacy anytime they want. Isn't that just great? Wow. Talk about a double standard. Incredible. All right, so let's check this out inside Rokfin. Little John is there. Hey, hello. He says, forgot to say hello to the host. Thank you very much, Little John. Good to see you there. Anarchy Andrew. AA. You rock, buddy. You rock. Hope everything's going great, man. And Harry Hot. Yes, Harry. Good to have you there. Anarchy Andrew, I was over in Manch today, Manch, Vegas, and hanging out at Auto Fair Ford. And I met a dude over there who is one of the few people I know who's an American who's been to Australia. He lived there for about 2 years. And we literally were at Surfer's Paradise just around the same time, 1992. And he goes, oh, you've been to Australia? I was like, yeah. He was working over there. He was a nice guy. I was like, yeah. He goes, yeah, I was dating a girl down there. I lived down there for 2 years around Sydney, but, I travel around. It was fun. And went up to the Gold Coast. I'm like, oh, yeah, Surfer's Paradise? He goes, yeah. You been there? I was like, yeah, man. I was there in 92. He goes, That's when I was there, summer 92. It was like, yeah, it was amazing. I didn't get into the discussion about the whole place is infested with great whites. I didn't get into that. No way. But I'm sure he understood. So everybody, thank you for being here. Spread the word and let's hop into our next big story. It is not the big story, but it's one of the major stories. And for it, we're going to be talking about immigration, as I just mentioned a second ago. So let's go with a theme. All right, here's the information for y'all. Yes, excellent stuff. Excellent, man. Oh, man. Okay, so here's the info. Let's do this, my friends. Let's do it. Do it till you're satisfied, whatever it is. Okay, first off, here is this one. Elon Musk came out with something that was worthwhile. Oh, and it just rejiggered on me. So here it is. So Elon Musk is getting turned on to a lot of different subjects and turning a lot of people on to some of this information. Got to hand it to him for that. So he says, when combined with mail-in ballots, the voting system is designed to make it impossible to prove fraud. Mail-in and drop-box ballots should not be allowed, as cameras on the in-person voting stations would at least prevent large-scale fraud by counting how many people showed up versus ballot access. Now,
we now have so many non-citizens in the country that if only 1 out of 100 of those voted, they would cast hundreds of thousands of votes.
That's not loud enough. So we're going to go over here and show you this, because this is the thing on which he was really relying. It was a Libs of TikTok response. Actually, this is just a response to it, to him. Immigration lawyer says his client voted in federal elections despite not being a U.S. citizen because she was automatically registered when renewing a driver's license. This is something that's been happening at DMV offices all over the country. And Libs of TikTok says only U.S. citizens should vote in our elections. So here is that info.
In this case, I realized that the only reason why she voted, how this client almost got deported, lost her green card because of a mistake during her citizenship interview. So this client retained my office after attending her citizenship interview with another attorney. What happened in that interview is that the officer discovered that she voted in the most recent elections and she's not a U.S. citizen yet. Consequences of voting without being a U.S. citizen could be devastating, resulting in removal and deportation. When I read the facts of this case, I realized that the only reason why she voted is because when she went to renew her driving license, they gave her an automatic ballot to complete. And this is something that's been happening at DMV offices all over the country, where some immigrants go renew their driving license and they receive a ballot for voting. So we were able to show the government that she didn't really intend to vote. It was pretty much an automatic registration at DMV. Finally, after a long wait, I got this text from my client that they were selected for the oath ceremony next Monday. Never lose hope.
Okay, so that dovetails with something that we've brought up here a couple times, the Massachusetts example. In Massachusetts, a number of years ago, they started up a deadline that actually finished off last year. And now in Massachusetts, anyone who carries out a transaction with the DMV, regardless of whether they are a citizen or not a citizen, will be registered to vote. So those people who are here illegally and aren't supposed to vote, well, of course, it's the first step for motor voter and to allow illegal immigrants to vote. But in addition to that, even if you're not allowed to vote as an illegal immigrant, you're still given access to voting now in many of these DMVs. So many people are being told, just don't say anything. Go ahead and vote, But don't let the cat out of the bag like this woman did and say that you voted, because then that could be trouble. And of course, a lot of the left wingers who want to get the votes on their side, if they think that's going to happen, they want the illegal immigrant vote. They are very much in favor of the motor voter push. So, of course, because they think it's going to support them politically. You know, it's sort of like all the people who talk about, well, we want the sanctuary cities and things like that. If you look at the Constitution, for some reason, there's nothing in there about immigration at all. And there's also nothing in there about sanctuary cities. It's supposed to be a state issue. And so therefore, if it were a state issue completely, then we wouldn't be implicated and we wouldn't be charged for nonsense like this one. This is a piece that will be out tomorrow at MRC TV, as far as I know. I got to write it while I was at the automobile place today. They had Wi-Fi, and actually I got to watch a little bit of someone's podcast today, and then the Wi-Fi, I finished off the article. Everything was great. Started to watch the podcast while I had my lunch. And actually, I ate the rest of it outside. It's a beautiful day. And then it started getting wonky on me. They were nice folks at the auto place. So it was just going in and out. I think a lot of people were using the Wi-Fi. So we've got this from New York. After complaining about cost of migrants, New York City Mayor Adams expands the welfare debit card system for them. Remember that? I was talking about that. You can find that on my Sunday News Assembly. Yeah. Remember when he said, we can't afford this anymore here in New York? That was just in February. Okay. Well, no, evidently not. Why? Because it's a bait and switch. They're telling you they can't do it, even after they claimed how they were so proud to be sanctuary cities, just like Massachusetts, sanctuary cities. We love the sanctuary cities, says Maura Healey while she's running for office. Then, of course, they start housing people in the hotels all over the state, including the hotels around Gillette Stadium, where they were going to have the Army-Navy game last fall. And then she starts saying, we have an emergency. They trigger a statute from the Dukakis era that if they say it's an emergency, they provide housing, medical, food, legal advice, all these different things that are part of that statute, right? And it can go on indefinitely. They just keep recycling it. And then she complains that they need more money from Alejandro Mayorkas. See? That's the way it works. Look over here, pick your pocket. Look over here, right? So here's the story of a not so lovely lady. In this case, it's Eric Adams, identifying as the mayor of New York. Here it is, contradicting his administration's claim in February that the city could not afford more handouts to migrants. There's the hyperlink, News Guard. Yes, Guard has the hyperlink for you, News Guard. His February claim that the city could not afford more handouts to migrants. New York Mayor Eric Adams just told taxpayers that he's going to expand the program twofold. Seriously. Bilal Rahman reports for Newsweek, New York City is expanding its program to provide prepaid debit cards to migrant families staying in hotels to allow them to buy food and essentials. It is expected, get this, that 7,300 prepaid debit cards will be distributed over the next 6 months with a total value of over $2.6 million, according to city officials. And because just last year, the city continuing with my thing, if you're listening in audio, and because just last year, the city got more than $100 million in federally grabbed tax money and money provided by borrowing, which inflates the money supply and has to be paid back by future taxpayers. That means his decision in New York could double the cash cards, to double the cash card system in New York is a matter of wider concern. Our concern. Of course, Adams and his underlings aren't worried. They appear thrilled. Quote, get this, everybody. I'll enlarge it for you like the cat. Gonna make it big. New York City Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services, Annie Williams Isom, and she gets compliments for the hyphen, described the program as a success. Yeah, it's a success because it helps newly arriving families to, quote, make choices for themselves and their children, end quote, by using debit cards. The fact that Adams and Williams-Isom are robbing taxpayers of their choices for themselves and their families doesn't seem to register at all. Quote, they can buy from local shops, support small businesses, and manage their own resources. Their own. She said in a statement, when we empower people, we help them achieve self-sufficiency and access the American dream, dream. Are you waking up yet? Yeah, right? When thieves, I wrote, when thieves tell you that they're helping the recipients of their stolen loot, when highwaymen claim that their theft is helping others access the American dream, there is not only a problem in the thievery, but in the twisted, immoral, arrogant mindset of the collectivists. City bureaucrats argue that this cash card program is better than the government paying food suppliers to bring eats to the migrants, that it will see less food waste and give the recipients more so-called choice. Migrants using the scheme must sign an affidavit to confirm they will only use the cards for food and baby supplies. Furthermore, the debit cards contain a specific code which will only function in certain stores. So I wrote anyway. Taxpayers should remember that when they try to buy food or essentials for their own families. The American dream. And people with common sense recognize that the cash cards have black market trading value, despite the government stipulation that they only can be used in certain stores. Be sure to remain friendly with the politicians who make up that list, New Yorkers. The cards can be turned into tradable assets that might not see food going into the hands of those who first received the cards, which is merely a functional problem. The immorality of government-forced redistribution of wealth is the prime non-starter. This is a quote from the piece, if you're listening in audio, to be redundant. Quote, Joseph Borelli, the Republican minority leader on the city council, told the New York Times that taxpayers are on the hook to pay for the city's growing migrant population. And ending that quote from the original Washington Newsweek. And I wrote, and it's important to remember that taxpayers are on the hook for welfare that's handed to citizens as well. As the migrant issue boils in many U.S. locales, and as both major political parties lock horns over what the central government should do about immigration, it's important to remember that the word immigration is not in the Constitution, and that, as I have noted for MRC TV, the founders left it to the states. It's also important to recall that redistribution of wealth is immoral in all forms, whether the recipient is a newly arrived resident or the recipient is a citizen. Citizenship does not grant one moral access to the fruits of another person's labor. And finally, it's important to see one more facet of this program. This digital cash card system presages the plans of technocrats, tax-fed politicians, and central bankers who thirst to impose on us a central bank digital currency. With such a system, they not only can control the money we have to use, not only can create money and continue to inflate the system, destroying our savings and buying power, they also can dictate where, when, and of how much we can spend. Senator Liz Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts, thirsts for such a system. Hyperlink NewsGuard, and she's not alone. It would give the federal government constant access to information on our savings, income, and spending. It would retain control over the make it out of thin air money system that politicians going back to the corrupt Alexander Hamilton loved, the make money out of thin air money system of central banking, and it would allow the politicians to steer money to only be used on favored industries or corporations. Favoritism, cronyism, collectivism, all the dark stains of political elitism. They are visible in this New York City card system. They are visible on the horizon for any CBDC the government tries to impose on us, and they are visible in all forms of wealth redistribution. So, Mayor Adams wants to take and spread around more of other people's money, but he's at the forefront of a digital currency and the troubling prospect of a universal basic income, ideas that not only are immoral, but will make more and more people willing pawns of government manipulation, sheep ready to be steered anywhere the government desires. It's a lesson from New York. We are being robbed and set up for trouble. Thanks to the folks at the Auto Fair Ford place for letting me use their Wi-Fi to get that over there. I appreciate that. So yeah, now as a side note, I want to bring up a couple more economic points. First, I want to refer to you something that I put out today via Gab and Twitter. Now, when you go to the Mises Institute, and I don't know why it is, and maybe it's something that I'm just missing, but up at the top of the page of the Mises Institute, they have their link to their Facebook, their X, whatever that is, Instagram, I don't know, YouTube channel, all that stuff, right? Their RSS feed, okay? But when you hit on the specific pieces and you try to share the pieces, they have a print tab, right? You can print it, but there's nothing at the top to share the pieces. And then you scroll to the bottom and it's like, yeah, it's Creative Commons. They let anybody use it. They haven't copyrighted it. That's cool. But you can't. So, yeah. And then the problem is that if you copy and paste that URL into X, it used to be that it would come up with the article, right? And the link would be there. But now it just says Mises Institute with the name of the article. And if you click on it, it doesn't go anywhere. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to Gab and I'm posting the stories inside my Gab. And then I take my Gab post and I copy the title of the article. And then I post my Gab post over with the link over to my Twitter. And then I paste inside before I finalize the Twitter thing from Gab. I paste the name of the article in there again. So I have to do that all the time. So here's the subject we're discussing right here. Alexander Hamilton, centralist and nationalist. This is from 2020 by Darren A. Wisely. Just a little reference here. The September 11th, 2001 terror attacks shocked the world. Go back in history a little bit if you want to carry this chunk with you. A little deference to James Corbett, who does such great work putting history together. A little deference to Richard Grove, who does such great work putting history together. And David Knight and so many others, and Tony Artimer and so many others. That's right. The September 11th, Charlie Robinson. September 11th, let's see, who else? Don Jeffries. The September 11th, 2001 terror attacks shocked the world, leaving ramifications still felt 19 years later. Few are familiar with the Republic's first 9/11 tragedy, September 11th, 1789. The day Alexander Hamilton was appointed Secretary of the Treasury. Hamilton is glorified as a hero in popular culture, even the subject of a hit Broadway musical bearing his name. He's the darling of both mainstream progressives and conservatives. So sad. Usually a telltale sign that someone is one of the worst of the worst. Part of the adoration for Hamilton comes from his rags to riches story. Both fatherless in the Caribbean and soon orphaned, it can't be denied that getting an education in New York, serving as General Washington's chief aide, and becoming a leading political figure is an impressive turn of achievements. Progressives love pointing to Hamilton for their nation of immigrants narrative, which doesn't make sense since Hamilton was born in the British Empire. Hamilton, the uber nationalist, is also cited by the neocons as their missing link from the founding to their one nation and America as a propositional nation mythologies. Getting beyond the romanticism, Hamilton's agenda set the table to give the federal government the tools to erode liberty over the next 230 years. Hamilton has perhaps done more damage to the United States than any other American figure. Even Woodrow Wilson and Abraham Lincoln, two more beloved icons of the mainstream. Hamilton was an opportunist, liar, and duplicitous. His vision paved the way to create a nearly unlimited central authority with no checks on its power, contrary to the principles of limited and self-government that many believed they had put in place for the new republic in 1788. So clearly the author's reference to 9/11 doesn't have to do with the number of people killed there, but with the changes in the state, in the operations of the federal government. He's saying Hamilton was on par or worse. So you got, I think, he's among the worst. Clearly he set the precedent. Lincoln came in, was incredibly bad. And then you've got so many people after Lincoln, but there were plenty of bad things that happened during John Adams' administration as well. So a lot of terrible people who've been in that office. The bait and switch, they write. Hamilton knew how to play the crowd. When it was time to ratify the Constitution, the Republican anti-federalists, who actually were the Federalists, feared a strong central authority. He, Hamilton, assured them the powers expressly delegated to the federal government would be the ones it would have solely. The second the Constitution was in effect, Hamilton flipped the script. One such example is in Federalist Essay number 21. Hamilton said that tariffs were better for the economy than direct taxes. Well, they're both poison. And of course, they're both used for political purposes, for rent seeking, to see who can gain the advantage of having someone block the foreign product. Just 3 years later, he changed his tune and advocated for a laundry list of direct taxes, which played a part in leading to insurrections, such as the Whiskey Rebellion. In Federalist 33, and by the way, it wasn't really an insurrection because the state government of Pennsylvania did not ask for help, claiming that it was an insurrection. It was all done from Washington by a judge who was a friend of Hamilton's and had nothing to do with anything constitutional. So there was no insurrection in the Whiskey Rebellion, according to their own standards of constitutional law. In Federalist 33, Hamilton said that the necessary and proper clause was harmless and wouldn't confer any powers to the federal government not expressly delegated to it. He once again flipped the script in office, citing the exact same clause to take federal action not delegated, such as establishing the first national bank. When it came to the General Welfare Clause, Richard Henry Lee was concerned that it would be used, quote, for every possible object of human legislation, end quote. Hamilton retorted that Lee's fears were absurd. In office, Hamilton again pulled the bait and switch, relying on this clause as an excuse to do anything and everything, saying the clause allowed for, quote, a vast variety of particulars, neither of specification nor definition. Yes, indeed. And there's a lot more there. That will be hyperlinked inside my story for MRC TV mañana. And talking about the welfare state, the government funding all its friends, the various politicians can try to generate love for themselves and claim they're doing good things, right? Let's look at that French election again, as we did last night. And of course, turn to one of our themes for welfarism, the Sons of Hercules. Give me some. Oh, yeah. Now, they're not French, but I'm sure they like French fries. Of course, coming from San Antone, they probably sprinkle lots of good spicy stuff on the fries. Hit me. Give me some. Give me some. Give me some. Oh, baby, yes, the Sons of Hercules. Remember the name of that album, if you're just listening, it's called Hits for the Misses, and every song on it is just great. Boy, I got to see them live before I even knew who they were. They went up there on stage at this thing called the Vegas Shakedown in 2001. Just a couple weeks after 9/11, I flew down to Vegas. I'm so glad that I went, and I saw all these amazing bands. That's where I discovered the Short Fuses, Miss Georgia Peach singing, just amazing rock and stuff. And that's where I discovered the Sons of Hercules and the Briefs and stuff. Very, very cool. One of the bands, this Swedish band, I helped fund their second album called The Demons. They were playing. They were playing there. So they were great. Everybody, just amazing bands. So anyway, so here's the story coming out of France. Get this. France's coalition, I know you're shocked, right? France's coalition vows to bring a 90% tax rate on the so-called rich. So here's the lesson in economics and verbiage. How about this? How about we actually mention to all these reporters, in this case, it comes to us from a person named Frankie Elliott from the Daily Mail, for Mail Online. How about Frankie Elliott stop using the term the rich and actually learn one of the most fundamental axioms of economics, which is that wealth is, and the valuation of wealth is subjective, right? Some of the poorest people around the United States today have more amenities than an Egyptian emperor had, than an Egyptian king. Okay, clearly, because of course, thanks to competition, productivity gains, and human ingenuity, people have offered inventions to people that have helped their lives. If they worked, they were successful, they made money, people found that field to be successful. They went in, they copied and tried to do the similar sorts of things, and competition brought the price down. And even some of the poorest people in the world now can get running water, hot and cold, television, refrigerators, good medicine, all sorts of good food. It's amazing. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and those giants are people just like us. Those giants stand atop their mechanism of free will and valuation. So wealth is subjective. A person who is a millionaire, I can't tell that person, I know how much you value $10,000. Maybe that person wants to start up a school. Maybe that person has a neighbor who's very ill. Maybe that person wants to go on a vacation and has dreamt of going someplace all his or her life. Who am I to say no? I can tell you, you are rich. And then where does the scale stop? If I earn $100,000 or $20,000, if I earn $18,000 and somebody else is earning $28,000, $30,000, is that person rich compared to me? Where does it end? And then we get one more lesson, of course, just to mention, in the United States, you'll often hear people talk about class. Class, right? Well, that's a very Marxist holdover from Marx, because Marx utilized class envy at the end of the feudal system and then applied it to property ownership in general and the competitive market system. Now, he was correct in criticizing the cronyist, politically connected vestiges of the royal peerage system that had made classes and had people who were connected and did get benefits from being connected to Parliament or the king or the queen. But people engaged in competitive private markets who just wanted to have their own private property, they weren't the problems. It was the political connections with the state. And although Marx claimed that somehow the dictatorship of the proletariat and the removal by them, the forced removal of any vestiges of private property, that somehow that would lead to an end of the state, everybody knows it doesn't lead to the end of the state, because human beings by their nature have a property in themselves, and they want to get what they think they deserve for their efforts. That's why they engage in interactions. They have different skill sets, and you can't tell them that they can't own their skill set, that they have to do something else, or they have to do their skills, they have to perform their actions for someone else. You can't tell them that. That's also not universalizable. It's immoral, and it doesn't work, because if I can tell you what to do and you can tell me what to do, well, then what's going to happen? It just becomes constant predation, which is the state. And so there would be no end to the state under Marxism, which is exactly what we've seen. It just degrades and becomes a power play. It's just collectivism and who's going to be in charge. So it's economic socialism without the nationalism of National Socialism, like Nazi Germany and like Mussolini's fascist Italy. It's not that, right? It's the class. Well, we don't have classes in the United States. Why? Because we never had a royal peerage system in the United States. There weren't the royal peers. Class is dependent on the feudal system. We didn't have the feudal system in the United States. They had slavery. They got rid of slavery. They got rid of the Indians too, unfortunately. So just a couple points to bring up here as we go back to wonderful France, the home of Jean-Jacques, Mr. Socialist Rousseau. France's radical left-wing coalition has vowed that, of course, has put Macron back into power, so they're going to demand something from him. As we discussed yesterday, we're just waiting for these other shoes to drop. Here we go. France's radical left-wing coalition has vowed to bring in a 90% tax rate on the so-called rich. Who are they? I don't know. Following their shock election triumph on Sunday. Hey, how about you leave people alone? How about that? And just eliminate state connections to business. That would require an elimination of the state. It's not the businesses that are the corrupting factors. It's the presence of the state that opens things up to corruption. And unless you get rid of the state, you're never going to get rid of that potential and that attraction for engaging in corrupt activities to get it to swing your way. In a result that caught political commentators by surprise, the New Popular Front emerged as the biggest party in the second round of the elections, which ended in a deadlock, gaining 182 seats ahead of President Emmanuel Macron's centrist Ensemble party on 168. Marine Le Pen's populist Right National Party, which won the first round of elections on June 30th, performed poorly, of course, as we know, because people made agreements to have their people drop out so they wouldn't split the vote on the left-wing and moderate sides. So this coalition wants a 90% tax, and they're going to be pushing Macron to do it. Manuel Bompard, coordinator of France Unbowed, said, "We are preparing to govern, to apply the program which is ours." And their program includes a 90% tax rate on any annual income above 400,000 euros, a reduction in the retirement age from 64 to 60, a block on the price of essential goods. All this just warmed over collectivism. You put a block on any rising prices, guess what you're going to get? Scarcity. Because there's no incentive for people to bring in more. There's no price signal to show that people that they need to change their resource devotion and allocation to start bringing in the stuff that seems to be fetching higher prices. And of course, if you're going to be spending more money on retirement, then yeah, you're going to want that 90% tax rate. That's going to be wonderful, huh? Yeah, that's going to be great. Just take more money away from people. And of course, the people who are earning that annual income are probably the ones who are in their 50s getting close to retirement. That's going to be fascinating. That's going to be fun. And yes, you're going to be spending more and borrowing more, destroying the buying power of everybody's money. Amazing. They want spending commitments of up to 150 billion euros every 3 years. And they want an increase in the minimum wage. So if you were thinking about moving to France, you might want to think again. That place is going to be a basket case. It's going to be even worse in a few years. What a complete mess. Wow. But hey, there's a lot of dumb economic thinking in the United States. Let's take a little moment to relax and watch this common sense bit on economics from none other than John Stossel going out to all the fans of Donald Trump.
Donald Trump and Joe Biden attack each other about most everything. If the other wins, they say,
there's a threat to our freedom. There's a threat to our democracy. Crooked Joe and the far left lunatics.
But on one important issue, they agree.
We're going to put a 100% tariff. 100% tariff on every single electric vehicles made in China.
Both love tariffs. Since the competing politicians agree, you might think, boy, they must be doing the right thing. But Biden and Trump are just wrong. The idea of tariffs sounds good.
Putting a 50% tariff on semiconductors made in China.
Protect American businesses from foreign businesses. Protect American workers from cheap foreign workers. But the downside is that everything costs more. A tariff's a hidden tax. It means you pay more every time you buy or build something. And American companies, instead of devoting their energy and profits to innovating, focus on lobbying politicians, trying to keep their tariff protection. Some years ago, when it was mostly Donald Trump pushing tariffs, I made this video.
You will have protection for the first time in a long while.
Yes, a tariff protects some American steelmakers. But what about the millions of companies that make things from steel parts? They're all going to be hurt. Did we learn nothing when we saw the damage done when President Bush raised tariffs on steel? And consumers are going to be hurt.
It's been allowed to go on for decades is disgraceful.
Trade is always under attack. During the election, the bad guy was NAFTA.
There has never been a trade deal as bad as NAFTA.
Many Democrats agreed.
NAFTA cost us jobs, 850,000 jobs.
But he's just wrong. NAFTA's reduction in tariffs and trade barriers did good things for America.
Millennials love avocado toast, avocado anything.
Take the current avocado craze.
Authentic, nutritious, creamy avocados.
It wouldn't have happened without NAFTA, because in winter, American avocados are scarce. But in other parts of the world, avocados are
in season year-round.
Avocados from Mexico. Today, Mexico provides Americans with most of our avocados, and we pay less for them than we would have without international trade. But the imports did not drive American producers out of business.
The iPhone is the result of years of innovation.
Trade also makes new things possible. Apple gets the special materials it needs for iPhones by going to the Congo, Mongolia, Egypt, Brazil, 63 countries in all.
Extract silver and platinum from the main logic board.
Materials are shipped to smelters in 34 different countries. Apple could do more of this in the United States, but different places offer different skills. Turkey and China are good at smelting. Digging through rock is cheaper in Mongolia. And so on. Apple then ships its refined metal to a bunch of other countries, where it's assembled into phones.
An aluminium body and formed sheet of glass.
Still, that's just a shiny piece of metal, glass, and plastic without the software.
For the first time, you can actually define the light in a scene.
The highest paying jobs are those held by techies, most of them in America, who design the software and program the phone.
This is iPhone 10.
This phone is possible and affordable only because of global trade.
This is a strike at the heart of Michigan.
But what about trade's downside?
Before NAFTA went into effect, there were 285,000 auto workers in Michigan. Today, that number is only 160,000.
Trump is right. But that's mostly because robots now allow car makers to make cars with fewer workers. The total sales of cars and car parts are up. Americans prosper when we specialize in things we produce most efficiently. Things like high-end machinery, energy, intellectual property like movies, music, medicine, internet startups. Not only do Americans make more money producing those things, the jobs are better. Farming and factory work are much more dangerous and physically demanding. Would you rather your kids work here or in an air-conditioned office? Finally, trade hasn't reduced the total number of American jobs. Today, a record number of Americans are working. It's time to stop applauding when politicians say ignorant things like this.
Not only did I oppose NAFTA, I stood on picket lines with workers in opposition.
He and those workers just don't understand what creates a better life for people. Yes, trade hurts some Americans, but many more are better off, much better off, because of trade.
All right. Interesting and good stuff from John Stossel. Those clips coming from 2018, by the way. Biden imposed a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs. Now Trump wants a 100% tariff on every car made in China. And those people, again, those people who think that, well, there are just some sectors that we can't lose. Well, I hope you'll consider what you're doing there. You're imposing your will on somebody else. And it is central planning. You're saying, I don't like central planning, generally speaking, if you're a conservative, but you like tariffs, but then you engage in central planning because there are certain things that just we can't allow to come into the United States because we would be losing some very important sector of the economy. Take your pick and have a great time trying to work out how that's going to get through the government and not be gamed. Because everybody's going to say that they are essential to the economy. Essential and non-essential? I thought we didn't like that. So just, I think, some very valuable information. And tomorrow, I'm going to go into some more economics, another encounter with economics. It didn't begin with LBJ, how the U.S. became a transfer society. That one just out yesterday by Edouard Boucher. So we'll tell you about that tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to that one. It's a great piece. I got to read that while I was over at the car dealership. So that was really cool. Now let's hop into a darker subject as we start to look at the international world and some very brutal information, everybody. Join me, fellow conspirators, as, yes, we look at warfare.
Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again, y'all. Look out. What is it?
It's Edwin Starr, baby, doing it, and then they really pick it up.
I despise, 'cause it means destruction of innocent lives.
Thank you, Edwin Starr, for doing what you did. Yes, indeed. I know a lot of people love it when I play Edwin Starr stuff.
War! I said war! Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Get said again.
All right, everybody. So let's rock this information for everyone out there. Before, during, and after, we've been obviously very concerned about many of these issues. So tonight, Genesis, let's get to it. This, I think, is one of the first things I want to mention to you. It has to do with war and free speech. Coming to us from Max Blumenthal, the Israel apartheid lobby openly admits it now. Their global campaign against so-called anti-Semitism has nothing to do with protecting real Jews, right? It is designed purely to censor, suppress, and criminalize critics of the violent supremacist Zionist ideology and its sectarian adherents. And folks, if you saw the billboard, you know what we're talking about is about Meta. Max has reposted something from the World Jewish Congress breaking. Meta will ban the use of the term Zionist as an anti-Semitic proxy for Jews. Again, just more verbal legerdemain, more Orwellian newspeak. Just like Congress, criticizing the state of Israel will be considered anti-Semitism, just like DeSantis in Florida. You're going to get punished more if you spray paint the side of a building with a criticism of the state of Israel than if you spray painted it with something really foul. Like, I don't know, you spray painted a picture of some, I don't know, congressman. That would be pretty foul. The announcement is a much needed advancement, says the World Jewish Congress, in our ongoing fight, the World Jewish Congresses, against online anti-Semitism and hatred. Meanwhile, if you happen to speak up for peace and, you know, you're waving, you're hollering outside of Congress, then you might get Fetterman coming out waving an Israeli flag at you as he just finishes a vote to send more weapons that Nikki Haley can sign to blow up your relatives in Gaza. That's awesome, isn't it? Just warms the heart, doesn't it? The announcement is a much-needed advancement, they say, in our ongoing fight against online anti-Semitism and hatred. And, of course, calling for peace is now called anti-Semitism. By recognizing and addressing the misuse of the term Zionist, really? No, I think we know who's misusing the term Zionist here. Yes, because you're equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, and that's not right. The Palestinians are Semitic, too. In fact, they're mostly composed of people who are Semitic as opposed to the Ashkenazi Jews who aren't Semitic. Meta is taking a bold stand against those who seek to mask their anti-Semitism. Oh, so now we've got deconstructionism. It's cultural Marxism. It's deconstructionism. It's we will tell you what you actually meant. Just like when you get an English teacher who will tell you what the real meaning of the story is. Oh, did the author ever say that? No. Then how can you say it? Because I have an agenda. That's how. Oh, I see. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for that. That's fantastic. Okay, now while we're at it, I want to take the opportunity to show you something that I think you might find pretty interesting. Let me head on over here and see if I can find this. Yeah. Aaron Mate, and it's there's an exchange from Aaron Mate on the Piers Morgan program that just might blow your mind because he got interrupted so many times. But it is such a back and forth. I think I might wait until tomorrow to show it to you. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a quick preview of this right now. It does get really intense, but this will show you what Aaron Mate has to put up with in an interview on the Piers Morgan program. It's not even an interview. It's a so-called conversation. One of these guys, the second to the left, is this former IDF spokesperson, this guy, J.C. Onricus or Jay Conricus. So listen to this. This is amazing because everything Aaron Mate says is absolutely right. And this guy keeps interrupting him and lying.
It did happen. That's been known for a very long time from Israeli military sources and witnesses who reported seeing Israeli forces fire on them.
So again, they're talking about the Hannibal Directive. They're talking about the Israeli forces firing on their own people. And that's all been substantiated. And Aaron and Max Blumenthal were some of the first people to report it. And they were right. And they deserve a lot of credit for standing up on that information.
It did happen. That's been known for a very long time from Israeli military sources and witnesses who reported seeing Israeli forces fire on them on October 7th. The difference is that now, finally, an Israeli newspaper, Haaretz, has acknowledged this, and more Israeli military sources have come forward. The reporting from Haaretz says, according to one source, that the order was to turn the south of Israel, that frontier with Gaza, into a killing zone, which is exactly what happened. It underscores that Israel has no concern for civilian life, not just inside Gaza, but also its own people, because it did not want to have Hamas take captives that could be used for negotiations to free Palestinian hostages. And that's been lost here. There are thousands of Palestinian hostages in Israeli dungeons. And
that's all confirmed, 100% confirmed. We've been talking about that for months now. That has been going on for years, kidnapping and holding people without charge and then releasing them and collecting more people. And the ICC cited Netanyahu for just that sort of thing and torturing people. But watch what this former IDF hack has to say.
The major goal of Hamas here was to take captives and use them as leverage to free Palestinians who have been in Israeli dungeons for years and years and years. And excuse me, I didn't interrupt you. I did not interrupt you. I did not interrupt you, despite your many falsehoods.
No, but what you're saying is disgusting.
Excuse me. I didn't interrupt you.
Hamas's murder.
And you're whitewashing mass murder, which is the whole point of suppressing the truth about October 7th since it happened. We have not heard.
Oh, and I guess you are the bearer of truth? A Hamas apologist? You will tell viewers around the world about truth?
Yes, he is telling the truth. That's the point. So we'll stop it there. The exchange is amazing, and Aaron Mate was quite the stalwart man, sticking up for himself and the facts. Now let's go into Gaza. IDF allows free-for-all violence in Gaza. I know, what a shock. This comes from 972 magazine. There are lots of quotes in here. Israeli soldiers describe the near total absence of firing regulations in the Gaza war, with troops shooting as they please, setting homes ablaze, and leaving corpses on the streets, all with their commander's permission. From Oren Ziv, published yesterday. In early June, Al Jazeera aired a series of disturbing videos revealing what it described as summary executions. Israeli soldiers shooting dead several Palestinians walking near the coastal road in the Gaza Strip on 3 separate occasions. In each case, the Palestinians appeared unarmed and did not pose any imminent threat to the soldiers. Such footage is rare due to the severe constraints faced by journalists in the besieged enclave and the constant danger to their lives. But these executions, which did not appear to have any security rationale, are consistent with the testimonies of 6 Israeli soldiers who spoke to 972 magazine and Local Call following their release from active duty in Gaza in recent months. Corroborating the testimonies of Palestinian eyewitnesses and doctors throughout the war, the soldiers described being authorized to open fire on Palestinians virtually at will, including civilians. 6 sources, all except one of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity, recounted how Israeli soldiers routinely executed Palestinian civilians simply because they entered an area that the military defined as a no-go zone. The testimonies paint a picture of a landscape littered with civilian corpses, which are left to rot or be eaten by stray animals. True. The army only hides them from view ahead of the arrival of international aid convoys so that, quote, images of people in advanced stages of decay don't come out. 2 of the soldiers also testified to a systematic policy of setting Palestinian homes on fire after occupying them. And of course, looting them, as we've seen, playing with women's underwear, little kids' dolls, cooking in their kitchens, celebrating, and sitting in homes while they watch their friends blow up buildings a few hundred yards away. That's the class of the IDF in the occupying party. Now let's go to this. I wonder what the Pope will have to say. At least he's been on a decent side on this one, although they excommunicated Archbishop Vigano. Here's this. Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem condemns Israeli bombing of Catholic school in Gaza. The Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem, the Catholic authority in the Middle East, has strongly condemned the Israeli bombing of a Catholic school in Gaza City that killed at least 4 Palestinians. Yep. And there's more. Couple more real quick here. Let's give this to you. Of course, we want to remind people of what the Lancet had to say about the Gaza death toll, that it could exceed 186,000. That confirmed live time by Richard Grove Sunday night as he got the Lancet and put it up there while he was on the air and showed the information. And then this one that could lead nowhere, of course. Israeli opposition leader offers to support Netanyahu if he accepts hostage deal. Well, that's probably not going to happen. Ministers in the Netanyahu government are threatening to quit if there's a ceasefire deal with Hamas. Israeli opposition leader and former Prime Minister Yair Lapid on Monday said he would support Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu if he reaches a hostage and ceasefire deal with Hamas and sees all those people flee. So there you go. That is the Israeli side of things, but there's a little bit more. So let's get into this. Let's get into this one. Judge Andrew Napolitano today having the opportunity to talk about how Israel wants to expand, and this final part on Israel wants to expand into Lebanon with more warfare, because, of course, Netanyahu's got to keep the war going. Otherwise, he'll leave office and go to prison. So here's more.
Other unpleasant consequences that might be visited upon him when he leaves.
Yes, that's correct. And I think if there is a war with Lebanon, this time two things will happen. First of all, Hezbollah is very well prepared with something over 100,000 missiles in its possession, which can blanket all of Israel and bring to Israelis all over the country the experience that those along the border with Gaza had on October 7th and that those in the north of the country have experienced recently. But more to the point, the Iranian government, newly elected president included, have said that if there is a war with Hezbollah, which is their client, they're not directed by them as a mind of its own, but it is their client, that they will be full bore in such a war. So this is, I think, something that the Israeli military absolutely do not want. And it would be foolish for Israel to do what the extremists in the cabinet are advocating.
All right. Very, very good stuff from the judge. Excellent, excellent interviews. And of course, he's amazing. You know, he'll schedule an interview, do an interview for a half hour. Another hour later, he's interviewing somebody else and going live. It's remarkable what Judge Andrew Napolitano does. And of course, you can follow him on YouTube. And just be careful if you're linking anything inside Facebook and it says anything about Zionism there. Watch out. Watch out. Amazing, crazy, absolutely nutty stuff. Now, I want to hop over into Ukraine now and just talk a little bit about what's going on with the United States proxy war in Ukraine. Of course, this is the grand 75th anniversary of NATO. So Joe Biden is sleeping through that. Of course, promising more weapons to Ukraine via NATO. And I'm sure more weapons will be going to Ukraine from France now that Mr. Jupiter Macron is secure and safe in his little seat, his little throne. And who knows, now that Starmer is over in England, maybe they'll be sending more of the British munitions that they've run out of because they sent them over to Ukraine already. But let's hear from Dave DeCamp about something very interesting. Poland. Yes, Poland could now down Russian missiles. Yes. Here we go. This is what Zelensky says.
Says that Poland could down Russian missiles. So on Monday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that a new bilateral security pact he signed in Warsaw includes a mechanism for Poland to shoot down Russian missiles and drones. So this is concerning. We've seen Ukraine sign these bilateral deals with a lot of NATO countries, including the U.S. Many of them were just like kind of symbolic. But Zelensky is saying that this one includes a mechanism to shoot down Russian missiles and drones, a mechanism for Poland to shoot down Russian missiles and drones. He said, quote, "We are especially grateful for the special arrangements, and this is reflected in the security agreement. It provides for the development of a mechanism to shoot down by Poland Russian missiles and drones fired in the airspace of Ukraine in the direction of Poland," end quote. So I didn't see any comments from Tusk, the Polish prime minister who signed this deal with Zelensky, about this particular aspect of it. But this is something Zelensky and other Ukrainian officials are pushing for. They want NATO to shoot down Russian missiles, Russian drones, and that would mean direct NATO involvement in the war.
Exactly. And guess what? Guess what, everybody? If you go to my X feed, then you'll see that just a little while ago, I X'd this bit of information out. Here it is. Also from the Libertarian Institute and also featured at antiwar.com. Wow, my goodness, what a surprise. U.S. provides $2 billion in military aid package to Warsaw, Poland. Connor Freeman writes, Washington is providing its NATO ally, Poland, with a second $2 billion foreign military financing FMF package in less than a year. Breaking, that's from the journal called Breaking Defense. Breaking Defense reports, in recent weeks, Warsaw has given Kiev a green light to use Polish-provided weapons to strike Russian mainland, as well as signed a bilateral military pact with Ukraine, agreeing to shoot down some Russian missiles. And boy, they've done such a great job on Russian beaches, killing civilians on them, that who wouldn't want more, right? It's just cheers all around. Yeah. And NATO wants, by the way, 30 to 50 more brigades. This also coming from Kyle Anzalone. Here it is, my friends. NATO needs 35 to 50 additional brigades. The North Atlantic Alliance's new battle plans will require members to produce hundreds of thousands of new soldiers. Maybe that's why they've been talking about a draft recently. Yeah. Anybody feel a draft? It's kind of chilly. I don't think I like it. No, I don't really go for that. Hall & Oates. Finally, wrapping that bit up. We got a little bit of Ukraine info, and then I'm going to go into the large chunk to tell you a little bit about the weapons being shipped from Ukraine to the Middle East. Here is Scott Ritter with the judge. Here come the judge. Check it out, my friends. Oh, wait a minute. There we go.
2024. My dear friend and friend of the show, Scott Ritter, joins us now. Scott, a pleasure as always. Thank you. Since thank you. Since we were last together, there have been two breaking news reports with respect to the Israeli behavior in Gaza. One is from the oldest medical journal in the world, the British medical journal Lancet, reporting that the deaths caused by the IDF from a variety of sources, from a variety of means, the deaths are likely to approach 186,000 human beings, which is a lot larger than the numbers we've been dealing with, and which would be about 8% of the population. The other breaking news, and you reported this, Max Blumenthal reported this, Aaron Mate reported this, and others did as well, which is the report by Haaretz, which actually got its hands on texts and emails and military directives demonstrating conclusively that the Israeli IDF did invoke its euphemism for mass murder, which it calls the Hannibal directive, and killed more than half of the 1,200 people who died on October 7th. Let's start with the Lancet. Is this number startling to you, and is it believable? 186,000 Palestinians dead.
Judge, when you take a look at the level of destruction that's been inflicted on Gaza, it's unimaginable. Now, normally, if you bomb a city, populations can flee the city. So the bombs start falling, the populations can, those who survive, which is the majority of people, can flee and move elsewhere. Not in Gaza. Their neighborhood gets bombed, they move to another neighborhood. That gets bombed, they move to another. And then what happens in Rafah, they're in open camps and the camps get bombed. The Israelis have literally been carrying out a policy of genocide. So this number is not implausible to me at all. And, the fact is the number could even be higher.
We'll stop it right there, everybody. Now, that's on the Israeli side of things. And, of course, he and the judge continue chatting for 40 minutes. It's an amazing interview. It's just remarkable stuff. So I want to go over a little bit further, deeper into this and show you this. Here we go.
Ended in April of 2022 had Ukraine accepted the terms that were negotiated by Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul. But Boris Johnson told them to say no. And now this war has been expanded to the point where Ukraine is incapable of telling the truth. And I'm afraid that what we're seeing right now is just another Ukrainian lie that's being echoed by Western mainstream media to prolong a conflict that has been devastating for the people of Ukraine.
Now, what does he refer? A little bit of mystery there without trying to be too rough and tumble on the mystery. I want to give you some of this information here from Russia Today. And this video tells us a little bit. There was an area in Kiev that the Ukrainians were attempting to defend, and some of their anti-missiles rockets ended up hitting civilian targets, and they blame the Russians. Let me see if I can find this for you here and put this into Jan's system, because this is just amazing. And the way that they have been lying about this is just incredible. And you actually can see the video. And if you're familiar with the different armaments, then you know that this was not a Russian rocket. And they're trying to play it off as if it's a Russian rocket. So check this out. This is what we're dealing with here. So, and I'm glad, like I said, I'm very glad that I've been watching Russia Today, because I get great perspective from them. So here we go. Check it out. Modi in Moscow covers this.
And now to the United Nations, where the Security Council has just concluded its session on the recent Russian strike on military targets in Kiev. Now, during the operation, a stray missile exploded near a children's hospital, which prompted a wave of accusations from Western countries.
Okay, so Modi's mode of speaking, sometimes it's a little bit difficult sometimes for me to sort of grasp everything. So when he talks about, he says the Russians were hitting military targets, and then a rocket hit a children's hospital, right? Now, the transition from the first to the second part of that might imply that it was one of the Russian rockets, all right? But it wasn't. It was not.
Russia's UN envoy, Vasily Nebenzia, pointed out that it was a Ukrainian anti-air missile which caused the explosion at a medical site.
Videos posted by Ukrainian internet users show how 5 missiles of the Russian aerospace forces arrive at the Artyom plant, one after another, without any interference or damage. Similarly, it is clear that a lone Ukrainian air defense missile arrives in the area of the children's hospital without any damage or interference. It is impossible to plumage and other features. How is it that the Ukrainian air defense misses all 5 strikes on the plant, but clearly hits the children's hospital? Perhaps
now, when he says that the Ukrainian air defense missile reaches the hospital without any damage, he means without any damage to the Ukrainian missile. Okay, the hospital did receive damage, of course, and people were hurt or killed.
A representative of the Kiev regime will answer this question for us. We're also waiting for a reaction from the Norwegian authorities, who apparently supplied the Zelensky regime with this NASAMS installation. Did they authorize it to be used to attack a children's hospital, as well as to be placed in residential areas in violation of international humanitarian law norms? Did they authorize it to be used to attack a children's hospital, as well as to be placed in residential areas in violation of international humanitarian law norms? We have repeatedly said that Russia does not strike at civilian targets in Ukraine. If we talk about the strikes of the Russian aerospace forces, which were indeed targeted at the Ukrainian military industry and the aviation bases of the armed forces of Ukraine, then one of the targets in Kiev was the Artyom plant, one of the largest enterprises in the Ukraine defense industry concern.
At the meeting, we heard various U.S.-aligned countries and NATO countries pounding the podium, but Russian Ambassador Nebenzia, when he took to the floor, he simply went over the facts, that it's very clear, according to video released by Ukrainian sources, that was not a Russian missile, that was the Ukrainian air defense missile. Russia does not target infrastructure like a children's hospital, and if they had intended to target this hospital, it would have been completely demolished, as Russian military equipment clearly hits the targets it's intended to hit. So the entire situation just doesn't match the narrative that is going forward in Western media. This is what the Russian ambassador had to say about how it just isn't true that Russia targeted this hospital and is responsible for these deaths of children.
We have repeatedly said that Russia does not strike at civilian targets in Ukraine.
Hold on, see if we're getting some static there.
If we talk about the
So I'll just stop there. We're getting static coming through the system. And I wanted to mention, when we watch all these disparate claims from various people, again, to me, the lesson that comes through is the difference between and whether it's Israel and the United States supporting that, or you've got the arguments about NATO. Now you've got Poland involved, and so on. All these different things that are cropping up, and the different claims that these people make. Imagine if you had this amazing, lightning fast series of accusations coming up between private businesses that were engaged in competition, just market competition with each other. And they were claiming industrial espionage and this and that and this and that. You know what would be interesting? You could decide not to buy their stuff. That's the problem for me that lies at the heart of all of this. Within the political sphere, you're not given a choice. You're made to pay for all of it. And so all the haranguing and all the disagreeing and all the lies that these people come up with, and in this case, I fully agree that the Russians are spot on about that, right? And I understand that Russia was the nation state that invaded Ukraine, but they did so after the Ukrainian government got overthrown by the West, which kept expanding NATO, now on its 75th anniversary of wonderfulness. And of course, they overthrew the government in late 2013, put in the new one in 2014, had the Nazis go and wipe out ethnically Russian people for almost 9 years in the Donbass, and also try to close off Crimea, right, to stop Russian energy exports. So, of course, Putin is very clearly concerned over what's going on there, and and sees again that the United States not only broke its promise not to expand into the Iron Curtain nations, but also overthrew the government that just got elected in late 2013, with which he had a very warm relationship, right? So these sorts of things, all these arguments, they come about because of the political world, and we can't stop it. We can't just say, no, I'd rather not pay for that. I'm not sure about that. I'd rather not give my money to that one. No, thank you. You're going to pay for it one way or the other. The classic brutality goes all the way down, and it's sourced from the fact that the state claims power over you. That's how little they care for human rights. So all the rest of it, of course, just manifestly arises because people don't question the state. The state is the problem. It is the assumption of power over you, to the point where they can draft you, they can make you pay for weapons to kill kids in Gaza, they can make you pay for weapons to blow up people on the beaches in Crimea, all sorts of things. Bioweapons plants in Ukraine, working with Nazis in Ukraine at the same time, that you tell people if they are critical of Zionist takeovers of the Palestinian lands, then they're anti-Semitic. And yet somehow the same politicians love shaking hands with Oleg Tyanibok, the Nazi in Ukraine. Right? Lindsey Graham? Right? Amy Klobuchar? Yeah. It's wild. It's like crazy stuff. Hey, I want to give you a real positive piece of information coming up in a minute. First, going to go into some of that information from Ukraine, about 5 minutes just to give you that. But first, I want to thank Brandon Bennett. Brandon, your $5 contribution after Carlos's $5 contribution at Rokfin. Thank you, gentlemen, both. I really appreciate it. And Brandon, I know it took me a couple minutes here to give more than that to get here to thank you over at Rokfin. He says, God bless Gardner Goldsmith. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. It's super appreciated. I'm very blessed. And I hope everybody out there recognizes some great things in their lives that they've been blessed to. Just the fact that they're alive in a wonderful world that we've got. As Louis Armstrong would say, it's a wonderful world. Yeah. All right. Now, it's time for me to give you this information from Russia Today. And this comes from their documentary from a while back about Ukrainian weapons shipments. So we're going to play part of this, and I think you might dig it. Here we go.
Ukraine for the rock trade that has been one of the biggest supermarkets of smuggled weapons for almost 30 years.
اسمي رضوان مرتضى أنا صحافي متخصص بشؤون
So if you're just listening in audio,
والجماعات.
this man says, I'm a journalist specializing in security court cases and terrorist groups.
ومن وقتها لهلا
He says, I focus on security issues in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq.
تخصصت تحديدا بالملفات الأمنية وكنت عم تابع ملفات الجهاديين بلبنان وسوريا والعراق ومنطقة الشرق الأوسط.
Radvan Mortada.
So Radvan Mortajan also focuses on the entire Middle East region. Here we go.
Is an independent Lebanese journalist, and during his career he's produced hundreds of reports on wars in the Middle East. He's met with Islamic jihadist leaders many times and knows exactly how weapons get into their hands.
في شيء هون هلا فرجيكم عليه هي الخريطة. في شيء الأساسي اللي عم فرجيك عليه هو الخريطة. يعني هون مثلا.
So he's going to be showing off an illegal border crossing for smuggling from Lebanon to the terrorist-controlled part of Syria. The terrorist-controlled part of Syria, by the way, is the one. Yes, that's right. That's the one that sided with the U.S. government and getting funding from the U.S. government, no doubt, because they oppose Assad.
كل حدود اللبنانية السورية فيها معابر غير شرعية بيمرقوا من خلال.
Says they're usually helped by locals on both sides of the border. Money.
المهربين اللي هن مهنتهم اللي هن أبناء سكان هذيك المناطق.
They've been doing this for decades.
اللبنانية والسورية.
Radvan was shocked to learn that arms are trafficked to the Middle East mainly from Ukraine. His findings are corroborated by the largest arms dealers in the region.
هلا اللي رح نعمله رح نتصل.
Says we'll now call one of the arms dealers.
بواحد من تجار السلاح بمنطقة البقاع لحتى يجي يحكي لنا نصور نحن وياه مقابلة يجي يخبرنا بالضبط.
So he says we're going to set up a meeting so he can tell us about the weapons that come from Ukraine.
شو الوضع السلاح الأوكراني؟ هل في سلاح أوكراني عنا ولا لا؟ ومن وين عم يجي؟ ألو مرحبا.
يا هلا.
كيف حالك؟
تمام ماشي الحال، كيف أنت؟
تمام. حبيبي كنا حاكيين كرمال.
So he says, how are you? I'm fine. My friend, can we meet for an interview?
إذا بدنا نصور مع غيره أيمتى بنقدر؟
أنت بدك فينا اليوم فينا بكرة.
بيمشي قدامي.
So they make an arrangement. He says, can you come tomorrow? He says, is today okay? They'll meet us and take us to the right place.
بوصل لهونيك وبلاقي حدا ناطرني وبتمشوا بتدلوني.
بلاقيك الشاب وبجيبك لعنا.
They'll take you to us.
Mafia arms dealers set up a meeting in a small town on the Lebanese border. One of the main arms trafficking routes in the Middle East passes through here.
هلا رايحين على البقاع.
He says, we'll see what weapons are on sale now and what price.
بدنا نقابل بدنا نشوف بالضبط شو السلاح اللي موجود بالسوق.
And find out if there's demand for them, says Radwan Mortada, a journalist from Lebanon.
شو الأسعار اللي عم ينباع فيها؟ هل في طلب على سلاح هلا ولا لا؟
And he says, we'll find out what links the Ukraine war.
وشو ارتباط الحرب بأوكرانيا؟
What links it with arms trafficked from Lebanon, Syria, and Turkey.
تهريب سلاح للمنطقة.
The Lebanese town of Zakhle, a 30-minute drive from the Syrian border. A meeting is arranged here with a guide who will take the journalist to a major arms dealer.
I should have said through Lebanon, Syria, and Turkey, not from. They come from Ukraine. Sorry. So here we go.
An unremarkable grey house on the outskirts, but this modest exterior hides what resembles an arms warehouse. Arms smuggling is big business for the locals, and sometimes it's the only way to survive.
Says, why did you choose to make a living this way? Says, my family's been in the arms business. Hold on just a second here. Says, my family's been in the arms business for generations. I'll just skip along. He goes, my grandfather was in it. The government gives us nothing. We have no government, Lebanese, hospitals, or jobs, nothing. We're carrying on the work of our ancestors.
Palestinian-Israeli conflict escalated, a time when massive arms purchases started across the region.
He says, where do the weapons come from?
اليوم الأسلحة اللي أنت مثلا اللي هون اللي شايفهم قدام.
Says the weapons you see before you come from two sources.
في عندنا مصدرين لإلهم. في ناس كثير من وراء الأزمة.
Due to the economic crisis, many Syrian and Lebanese groups
اقتصادية في ناس صارت تبيع أسلحة، يعني الطبقة الفقير والطبقة المعدومة اليوم هن عم بيبيعوا السلاح الفردي، مش ما في عندهم سلاح
have started trading weapons. They've started trading weapons piece by piece in small batches.
سلاح فردي عم يضطروا يبيعوه كل ما بيعيشوا، وهذا الشيء من وراء.
But no heavy or large caliber weapons. And I'll just scroll through this to continue for you. We get big shipments from Ukraine. As you know, NATO is giving weapons to Ukraine due to the war. These weapons go on the black market to Turkey, then to Iraq, and then on to Syria and Lebanon.
بفوت على العراق، من العراق برا عم يجي على سوريا ولبنان، صرنا نلاقي بالسوق اليوم احنا كتجار عم ينعرض علينا انه سلاح.
Medium and large caliber weapons come from Ukraine thanks to NATO. We'll go into more of that later. As I mentioned, when we watch future segments of this, we'll see how that 2008 tanker piracy, the takeover of the tanker, it was a Ukrainian tanker that people didn't mention was filled with weapons. So we'll talk about that. And I can't believe, thank you very much. He says, documentary says, behind the scenes, looks like a low budget film. It's documentary. Netflix does the same. It's just business to these people. Yep. That's just business. They're making their cash as best they can. And, life and death must be real strange down there. Very, very cutthroat. And Brian De McCartney, God evening, Guard, and all Rock fam. Hi. Hello. That was a little bit earlier. And I see Brandon Bennett back in there. Thank you, Brandon. Hope you got to hear my thank you as well for that contribution. That was great of you. Really appreciate it. Little John, cool driving those cars. Oh, they're talking about lots of cars. All import cars. Is that Rolls Royces? Rollies? 4 or 5 Rollies? Not sure. It'd be interesting to talk to people about the coolest car they've ever driven, the coolest driving experience they ever had, in addition to the coolest car. Hal 9000 Watson is inside Rumble Land as well as Freegan. And let's see. He says, if I knitted Canada Day pants, they would be SH, you know what, brown. Well, it just sort of fits the fascist nature of the head of the government there, right? Of course, technically, the head of the government there is the king, isn't it? Yes, but the wonderful, wonderful Mr. Trudeau is just he's just great, isn't he? He's awesome. By the way, I think I mentioned earlier I mentioned someone's name. Oh, it was the Fox reporter, Peter Doocy, not Steve Doocy. Steve Doocy's his father. So it was Peter Doocy who was down there asking questions about the Prez. So he's a gutsy dude. I always enjoy hearing him when he's out there. And I hope you've enjoyed the night. We'll go into a little bit more of the Ukrainian documentary stuff. I'll try to play with that to make sure that the stuff where they're speaking other languages and there are subtitles, that I can bring that volume down and maybe scroll through it. That seems to be a much easier way to do it. But there's amazing information in here. I mean, it's great investigative reporting on the part of the people who did this documentary for RT. I was very, very impressed. And I was glad, actually, that I got it. They do replay stuff over the weekend at RT. So if you miss something, sometimes you can watch it again. Like Moscow Mules, they'll put that on a couple times. That I discovered. I didn't know that when I first caught it. I was like, oh, what's this? I got to record this. This is great. And this documentary has been on a couple times, but I'm glad I caught it because if you go over to the RT website, you can go in and sometimes find their documentaries but I don't know how much they keep up there, what the space for their servers is like and stuff like that. So getting some of this and keeping it, I think, is very valuable. I really appreciate being able to do that. So, and I appreciate you all being here. This has been an absolutely wonderful, great night. And I wanted to show you one other thing. If you want to do something nice and get into a nice vibe, again, if you go to my X feed, you'll see that among all the big major stories and so things that are so intense and economic lessons and things like that, I put up videos about music or cultural things, book reviews, that sort of stuff. I always like that. Funny things occasionally, but I also do things about animals, in particular cats. And so this is a great example of what I've mentioned before in the show. This is Jack5928, and he goes by at JL the Kid 9999. If you're listening in audio and you want to follow him, it's at JL the Kid 9999. And this is what they do. They post these call outs for animals that are sometimes on the short list to be killed in things like the Manhattan Animal Shelter or Brooklyn Shelter, that sort of thing. Because of course the government will collect these things, the animal catchers collect them. Sometimes people die and the animals are left. Sometimes people abandon them in the most cruel and awful ways. It's just it really, really tears at the heart, especially if you like animals, if you like cats in particular. But I like all kinds of animals, right? I mean, it's just amazing. It's so cool. And so here's a real positive one. This one ended great. They were asking for contributions to help a cat named Muffin. And they say that there was a shelter that says here, Muffin is safe and has been rescued by Brooklyn Bridge Animal Welfare Coalition. Thank you so much to all who shared and pledged. So the way they work it, if you're interested, and you can find a lot of these on my Twitter feed, my X feed, if you want to do it for a couple months and then stop, maybe it gets too emotional because there are a lot of animals that are out there and they need help, right? And humans, it just makes you think about all the humans who, your next door neighbor, check in on that person, it gets you to think about all those things too, right? But in this case, if you see these animal things, you can help out. So over the past few weeks, I pledged, $10 for this cat or $5 for that cat, and they get enough people that it'll cover the medical expenses that might be necessary for this cat, maybe to be spayed or neutered or to get dental surgery or, something, maybe it has a urinary tract infection. It would make it difficult if somebody wanted to pick up the cat because they already have immediate expenses that will be covered now. So it's pretty cool. You can do, a lot of times you can link up through PayPal and stuff like that. But what they do is they add it up at the end. And if they get enough people pledging, you don't have to put the money in at first. If they get enough people pledging, then a shelter, they'll signal the shelter and they'll say, okay, we have enough of these. The shelter will accept the cat or whatever. I mean, not the shelter, the rescue coalition or the adopter. They'll signal that person, and then you can go and pay, and it goes to a particular organization that helps the animals. So it's pretty cool. And they suss out if there are any, fakes or anything like that. So here is one of the cats that, I helped rescue, Muffin. And, it was a $5 contribution. I had done a $10 one before, and I was like, I really can't do much more than $5. But it was one of the many that helped save this cat's life. He's only 3 years old, Muffin. So saved a cat. Happy days ahead for another cat. Owner gets to, love that cat, have a great time. And it's wonderful. It's just wonderful. So think about it. If you get a chance, check it out over my X feed. Think about your local shelters, whatever. And again, we'll open up the mic sometime to some of your pet stories and things like that to remember some of your favorites. We'll maybe do that in a couple weeks or so. That'll be kind of nice as well. So thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great night. I'm going to leave you with that famous animal, the king of Kongs, King Kong. And thanks for absorbing all this great info. If you've got info on your side, hit me up on the backside of Twitter/X. Send me the info. You can also, after the show, go into the comments underneath at Rumble, Rokfin, and YouTube and put in links that you might think are important. And we'll talk about more from MRC TV tomorrow. And I wish you a great rest of the 9th, headed into the 10th. We'll say hi to the king. God bless everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the conspiracy. We'll talk to you mañana in David's chat. Rock on, rock on.